My name is Joe, I'm 72 years old, and I want to share with you how I learned to move more intelligently after 70. You know, it wasn't always easy to accept that we need to change our habits as we age, but today I understand that this wisdom makes all the difference in our quality of life. 2 years ago I was that stubborn old man who thought that the more exercise I did, the better it would be. Every single day I woke up at 6 a.m. and went for my long walks through the Riverside neighborhood in Boston. In my head, if 2 hours of walking were good, 4 hours would be even better. How wrong I was. I perfectly remember the day when my daughter Mary, who is a physical therapist, found me limping in the living room after one of those endless walks. My joints hurt so much I could barely sit on the couch. "Dad," she said with that worried look, "you're hurting yourself more than helping." It was hard to accept at first, but she was right. That week, we started a new routine together. Mary explained that at our age, we need to be more strategic with our movements. "It's not about quantity, Dad, it's about quality," she always repeats. We started with simple changes. Instead of my morning marathons, I began doing 2 shorter walks, a 20-minute one in the morning and another 25-minute one in the late afternoon when the sun wasn't so strong. You know what? I started feeling much better. The joint pain decreased considerably, and my energy lasted all day, not just until noon like before. But the great discovery came when Mary introduced me to Mr. Albert, a Tai Chi instructor who teaches at the community center near my house. I confess that at first I thought it was kind of silly, turtle movements, as I used to joke. But after the first class, something changed. Tai Chi taught me that movement doesn't have to be synonymous with speed or brute force. I remember Mr. Albert saying, "Joe, imagine your arms are moving water in slow motion." Those gentle movements began to awaken muscles I didn't even know I had. And the best part, no pain, no excessive fatigue. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I started participating in senior yoga classes with Mrs. Martha. At first I thought some positions were impossible, but she always said, "Everybody has its own time and limit, Joe. Respect yours." Over time, I noticed that I could bend down to tie my shoes more easily, and that nagging back pain that had been with me for years started to give me a break. Today, my routine is quite different from 2 years ago. I wake up at 7 a.m., do some basic stretches I learned in yoga while still in bed. This helps the body wake up slowly. I have my breakfast calmly and go out for a 20-minute walk around the block. I greet the neighbors, observe the trees, feel the morning sun, all without rushing. On Tuesdays and Thursdays I have Tai Chi at 9 a.m., and it's impressive how those movements have improved my balance. The other day I slipped on a wet floor at the supermarket, but I managed to regain my balance quickly, something that would have been a certain fall before. The yoga classes on Mondays and Wednesdays have also done wonders for my flexibility. Who would have thought that at 72 I could touch my toes without bending my knees? In the afternoon I usually take my second walk, shorter, about 15 minutes, especially when the weather is pleasant. I've learned to listen to my body. If I'm more tired, I slow down or even skip the afternoon walk. There's no more of that old pressure. What impresses me most is how these changes have affected other aspects of my life. I sleep better, wake up more energized, and that anxiety I used to feel at night has decreased a lot. Even my blood pressure has stabilized. At the last appointment, Dr. Robert, my cardiologist for 15 years, said I was doing better than many 50-year-olds out there. The other day I was playing with my grandson, Peter, who's 5 years old, and I managed to sit on the floor to do a puzzle with him, something that would have been unthinkable 2 years ago. The joy on his little face when he saw me sitting there on the living room rug is priceless. Mary, who was present, had tears in her eyes. An important lesson I learned on this journey is that movement is life, but it needs to be conscious movement, respectful of our body. There's no point in trying to run a marathon at 70 if we can't even get out of bed the next day. It's better to do less and do it well, with regularity and attention. Today, when I meet friends my age complaining about pain and limitations, I always share my experience. Some have already started attending Tai Chi classes with me, and seeing their transformation is also gratifying. As Mr. Albert says, the body is like a garden. It needs daily care, but without excesses. Too much water also kills the plant. For those who are just starting now, here are some tips I learned on this journey. Start slow. Don't try to make up for years of sedentary lifestyle in a week. Choose activities that give you pleasure. If you don't like Tai Chi, try yoga or water aerobics or senior dance. Maintain a routine but be flexible. Some days will be more willing than others, and that's okay. Seek company. Exercising in a group is not only safer, but more fun. Celebrate small victories. Managed to touch your toes today? Great. Try again tomorrow. At this stage of life, I've learned that we don't need to compete with anyone, not even with our past selves. The important thing is to stay active, but with intelligence and respect for our body. After all, as my daughter Mary says, "Dad, you're getting older, but you don't need to get more still." After I started exercising more intelligently, I realized I needed to pay special attention to my diet. You know how it is, right? As we get older, it seems like our body starts to get pickier with food. It was during a routine checkup that I had a big surprise that changed the way I eat. "Mr. Joe, you have a vitamin B12 deficiency," said Dr. Claire, showing my test results with a worried expression. I confess I was scared. How come? I'd always prided myself on eating well. I even had a vegetable garden in the backyard. But that's when I learned an important lesson. After 70, our body has more difficulty absorbing some nutrients even when we eat well. The doctor explained that B12 is essential for the brain and for producing those little red blood cells. Remember that fatigue you've been feeling? It could be because of this, she explained. That's when we started working together with a nutritionist, Dr. Betty, who helped me reorganize my entire diet. First, I learned about the famous B-complex vitamins. Dr. Betty explained it in a way that even I understood. "Mr. Joe, think of B-complex vitamins as a football team. Each one has its function, but they need to work together." She even made a funny comparison. B1 would be like the center forward, transforming food into energy for the whole team. B6 would be the midfielder, coordinating mood and memory plays, and B12 would be the goalkeeper, protecting the team from problems. I started paying more attention to foods rich in these vitamins. I began eating more meat, not too much, but regularly. Eggs also became a constant presence at breakfast. "And don't eggs increase cholesterol?" I asked, concerned. Dr. Betty smiled. "Mr. Joe, that's an old myth. Eggs are true capsules of important nutrients for you. But the biggest change came when I discovered the importance of vitamin D. I had always been one of those who avoided the sun, you know? I was afraid of skin cancer. But Dr. Betty explained that we do need a little bit of sun, especially early in the morning or late in the afternoon. It's like a plant, Mr. Joe. Without sun, we don't bloom properly. I started sunbathing for 15 minutes every morning after my walk. I take the opportunity to water my plants and sometimes chat with Mrs. Zelda, my neighbor, who also discovered the benefits of morning sun. She always jokes, "We're here doing our photosynthesis, Joe." The omega-3 issue was also a revelation. The nutritionist taught me that this nutrient is like a lubricating oil for the brain and joints. I started eating more fish, sardines, tuna, salmon. At first it was a challenge because my late wife was the one who used to prepare fish at home. But then my daughter Mary signed me up for a cooking class for seniors at the community center, and now I make a delicious grilled salmon. I also learned about the importance of proteins. "Mr. Joe, protein is like building material. Without it, the house falls down," Dr. Betty explained. Besides meat and fish, I started eating more beans, lentils, and chickpeas. I discovered that even natural yogurt has protein. Now I make sure to have some every day at afternoon tea, along with fruits and granola. An interesting discovery was about creatine. When Dr. Betty mentioned it, I immediately thought, isn't that for bodybuilders? But she explained that it's a substance that our own body produces. But as we age, this production decreases. I started taking a supplement, and I confess I felt a difference in my energy, especially during Tai Chi classes. Antioxidants became my great allies. My vegetable garden, which was previously more to occupy time, gained double importance. I planted more kale, spinach, arugula, all rich in antioxidants. As my grandson Peter says, "Grandpa, you've become a farmer. And you know what? The vegetables we plant ourselves seem to taste better." I organize my eating routine in a way that works well for me. Breakfast, 7 a.m. Scrambled eggs with spinach from the garden, a slice of whole grain bread with avocado, an orange, straight from the tree I planted. Coffee with milk. Morning snack, 10 a.m. Natural yogurt with granola and honey. A handful of nuts. Lunch, 12:30 p.m. I always start with a colorful salad protein, alternating between fish, chicken, and lean meat. Brown rice and beans, sautéed vegetables. Afternoon snack, 3:30 p.m. Seasonal fruits, a piece of white cheese. Sometimes a small piece of 70% dark chocolate. I discovered it's good for mood. Dinner, 7 p.m. Vegetable soup with quinoa, a whole grain toast, chamomile tea. Doctor. Betty taught me the importance of keeping regular meal times. It's like winding an old clock, she says. The body works better when it knows what time it's going to receive fuel. I also learned not to overdo portions at night. As the saying my mother always repeated goes, eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper. Ancient wisdom that makes perfect sense. The change in diet brought benefits I didn't expect. Joint pain decreased, combination of omega-3 and exercises. My memory improved thanks to B-complex vitamins, and even my mood became more stable. Dr. Robert, my cardiologist, was impressed with the improvement in my blood tests. The other day I received a surprise visit from my 3 grandchildren. For those who are starting to pay more attention to their diet after 70, here are some tips I learned on this journey. Have regular checkups to identify nutritional deficiencies. Don't be afraid of supplements, but only take them with medical guidance. Maintain regular meal times. Invest in colorful and varied foods. Get moderate sun exposure, neither too much nor too little. Drink plenty of water throughout the day. Don't skip meals, even if you don't feel very hungry, and most. Importantly, it's never too late to change eating habits. I prepared a healthy snack for them, yogurt with fruits and granola, and I was touched when the oldest, Sophie, 12 years old, said, "Grandpa, you're more energetic than my dad." I laughed a lot, but deep down she was right. As Dr. Betty says, the best age to start eating well is now. You know that saying that wisdom comes with age? Well, but no one told me that insomnia would come too. For a long time, I thought it was normal to sleep poorly after 70. It's just age, I would say, while spending hours tossing and turning in bed, staring at the ceiling or worse, at the phone screen. It was on one of those sleepless nights that I received a message from my granddaughter Sophie on WhatsApp. It was 3 a.m. and she, surprised to see me online, asked, "Grandpa can't sleep again?" That innocent question made me realize that something needed to change. The next day, with deep, dark circles and not a very pleasant mood, I decided to seek help. Dr. Claire, my geriatrician, referred me to a sleep specialist, Dr. Paul. Right in the first consultation, he asked me a question that changed everything. "Mr. Joe, tell me about your bedtime routine." And when I started to describe it, I realized how much I was doing wrong. My old routine was more or less like this. After dinner, I would watch the news on TV until late, often with my phone in hand, sharing news in family groups. When sleep started to hit around 11 p.m., I would go to the bedroom. But first I would check messages one more time, take a look at Facebook, respond to some comment on Instagram. Yes, I learned to use all these technologies. Dr. Paul explained that all that blue light from electronic devices was messing up my melatonin production, the sleep hormone. "It's as if you were telling your brain that it's still daytime even though it's night," he explained. That's when we started to develop a new nighttime routine, which I affectionately call Mr. Joe's sleep protocol. First change, earlier dinner. Before, I would have dinner at 9 p.m., almost at the time of the evening news. Now I have my last meal at 7 p.m., a light soup or something milder. As Mrs. Zelda, my neighbor who also adopted this change, says, going to bed on a full stomach is asking for sleep to run away. After dinner, instead of going straight to the TV, I started a different ritual. First stop, my garden. Even at night, I like to take a stroll there, smell the plants, especially the jasmine I planted near the kitchen window. Dr. Betty, my nutritionist, explained that this light walk helps with digestion and prepares the body for rest. At 8 p.m., I turn off the TV and all devices with blue light. At first it was difficult. It felt like I was disconnecting from the world, but I found other activities for this time. I started to pick up the habit of reading, which I had abandoned years ago. My daughter Mary gave me a Kindle with large print, perfect for reading without straining my eyes. I also discovered the relaxing power of crochet. Yes, crochet. It was Mrs. Martha, my yoga teacher, who suggested it. Mr. Joe, handwork is like meditation. At first I thought it was just for ladies, but now I make such nice hats and scarves that you should see. I've already made one for each grandchild, and now I'm producing to donate to the nursing home nearby. Another important change was in lighting. Dr. Paul taught me that very strong lights at night also disrupt sleep. I installed softer, yellowish lights in the living room and bedroom. And I bought a bedside lamp with red light. It seems like something from the movies, but it works. I created a special corner in the bedroom for meditation and prayer. Nothing too elaborate. A comfortable armchair, a small rug for the feet, and a rosary I inherited from my mother. Every day before bed I spend about 15 minutes there, thanking for the day and preparing my mind for rest. The bedroom also went through a transformation. I learned that it needs to be a sleep sanctuary. I removed the TV, that was difficult, installed blackout curtains, and maintain a pleasant temperature. As Dr. Paul says, the ideal bedroom should be like a cave, dark, quiet, and cool. I developed a gratitude ritual before bed. Every night I write in a little notebook 3 good things that happened during the day. It can be something simple like the tomato plant bore fruit, or I received a call from my grandson. This exercise helps me end the day with positive thoughts. The result of all these changes: I started sleeping like an angel. Now I go to bed at 9:30 p.m. and wake up naturally at 6:30 a.m. without needing an alarm clock. And the most interesting thing, I discovered that I no longer need that after-lunch nap that used to last 2 hours and left me more tired than rested. Of course, not all nights are perfect. Sometimes, especially when it's very hot or when something worries me, sleep still takes a while to come. But I've learned techniques to deal with this too. 4 to 7, 8 breathing. I inhale counting to 4, hold the air for 7 seconds, and release slowly counting to 8. I learned this in yoga, and it works like a call to sleep. Guided visualization. I imagine I'm walking on the beach. I love the sea, feeling the sand on my feet and hearing the sound of the waves. I almost always fall asleep before reaching the end of the imaginary walk. Relaxing tea. I always have a thermos with chamomile or lemon balm tea on the bedside table. If sleep insists on not coming, I take a little sip. The other day I received a message from Sophie at 10 p.m. She was worried when I didn't respond right away. The next day I explained about my new sleep routine. You know what she did? She created a WhatsApp group just with the grandchildren called Good Morning Grandpa, where they leave messages that I read calmly when I wake up. For those having sleep problems, here are some tips I learned on this journey. Keep regular times for sleeping and waking, even on weekends. Create an environment conducive to sleep. Dark, quiet, and cool. Avoid electronic devices for at least 2 hours before bedtime. Develop a relaxing nighttime ritual. Don't stay in bed if you can't sleep. Get up and do something calm until sleep returns. Avoid stimulating drinks, coffee, black tea, soft drinks, after 2 p.m. Practice regular physical activity, but not too close to bedtime, as Dr. Paul says. Good sleep is like a bank account. You need to make regular deposits of good habits to have a positive balance of rest. And you know what the best part is? Now that I sleep well, I enjoy my days much more. I have more energy for Tai Chi classes, more patience with my grandchildren, more mental clarity to take care of the garden and do my crochet. As Mary says, Dad, you're sleeping more and living better. After organizing my diet and sleep, I realized I needed to take a step further in my exercises. I had already reduced my long walks, but I still felt I could do more for my body. That's when Mary, my physical therapist daughter, introduced me to the concept of low-impact exercises. Dad, she said during breakfast one day, have you ever tried water aerobics? I confess I turned up my nose at first. In my head, water aerobics was for women. Little did I know I was about to discover a whole new world of possibilities. I started with trial classes at the neighborhood gym. On the very first day, I met Mr. Charlie, my old colleague from the bank, where I worked for 35 years. There he was, all excited in the water, doing exercises to the sound of oldies. "Joe, you don't know what you're missing," he shouted from the pool. The first class was a revelation. The instructor, Amanda, a very patient young woman, explained that water offers natural resistance to movements, strengthening muscles without impact on the joints. It's like weight training, Mr. Joe, just without all that weight on your back. After 2 weeks of water aerobics, I already felt a difference in my energy levels. The back pain, which had been a constant companion even after I stopped the long walks, started to decrease. But the big change came when I started combining different activities. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I go to water aerobics. It's amazing how we've formed such a lively group. There's Mr. Charlie, Mrs. Margaret, who at 80 is the most energetic in the class, the Smith couple, and about 10 other seniors. We've become a real family. After class, we always have coffee together at the corner bakery. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I keep my Tai Chi classes with Mr. Albert. Now with more strength and balance thanks to water aerobics, I can do the movements with much more precision. Mr. Albert always says, "Joe, you're flowing like water." Little does he know that water has really been my teacher, but the great discovery was indeed yoga. Mrs. Martha, our teacher, has a special way of teaching. She understands everyone's limitations and always offers alternatives for the more difficult positions. "Mr. Joe, you don't need to touch the floor with your hands. Let's use these little support blocks." One day during yoga class, I had an amazing experience. We were doing a pose called tree, where you stand on one leg, and for the first time, I managed to keep my balance for over a minute. Mrs. Martha explained that this was the result of combining activities. Water aerobics strengthened my legs, Tai Chi improved my balance, and yoga brought body awareness. I created a routine that works perfectly for me. Monday 8 a.m. water aerobics 45 minutes, 10 a.m. light stretching at home, 4 p.m. short walk in the park 20 minutes, Tuesday 9 a.m. Tai Chi 1 hour, 3 p.m. yoga 1 hour, Wednesday 8 a.m. water aerobics, 2 p.m. breathing exercises and meditation, Thursday 9 a.m. Tai Chi, 3 p.m. yoga, Friday 8 a.m. water aerobics, 4 p.m. light walk with the senior group, weekend lighter activities such as stretching at home and short walks in the park with the grandchildren. The most interesting thing is how each activity complements the other. Water aerobics gives me strength and endurance, Tai Chi works on balance and concentration, and yoga brings flexibility and inner peace. It's as if each practice was a piece of a puzzle that, when assembled, forms a healthier and happier person. A recent episode showed me how much I've evolved. I was playing with my grandson Peter in the park when he threw the ball a bit far. I ran, yes, ran, to get the ball and came back without even being out of breath. Mary, who was present, was impressed. "Dad, a year ago you could barely bend down to tie your shoe. Low-impact activities have also brought benefits I didn't expect. My blood pressure is more controlled, I sleep better at night, and that anxiety that sometimes bothered me has practically disappeared. Even my memory seems to have improved. Must be all that oxygen circulating better in the brain." Dr. Robert, my cardiologist, was impressed with the results of the latest tests. "Mr. Joe, keep it up. You have the heart of a 60-year-old. Jokes aside, I know this improvement is the result of combining all the activities. One of the greatest joys is seeing how these activities have improved my social life. Before, I spent a lot of time alone at home. Now I have friends in each class, the water aerobics crowd, the Tai Chi group, the yoga class. We have get-togethers, celebrate birthdays, exchange healthy recipes. The other day we organized a senior wellness festival at the community center. Everyone showed a bit of what they learned in their favorite activity. I was chosen to do a Tai Chi demonstration, and my grandchildren filmed everything. The video went viral in the family groups. Now I'm a small celebrity. For those just starting out with low-impact physical activities, here are some tips I learned on this journey. Start slow and respect your limits. Try different activities until you find the ones you enjoy most. Maintain a routine, but be flexible. Hydrate well before, during, and after activities. Wear appropriate clothes and shoes for each practice. Don't compare your performance with others. Celebrate each small achievement. As Amanda, the water aerobics instructor, says, "It doesn't matter the speed, what matters is to keep moving." And she's right. At 72, I feel more active and energetic than many younger people. Mary always jokes that I've become a senior fitness influencer. Exaggerations aside, I'm happy to be able to inspire other seniors to move more. As Mr. Albert says, the body is like a river. If it stays still, it creates sludge. It needs to be always in motion, even if gentle. And you know what the best part is? All these activities help me maintain independence. to do the things I love, take care of my garden, play with my grandchildren, do my crafts, travel. As Mrs. Martha says, "Mr. Joe, you're not just exercising, you're investing in quality of life." Taking care of the body is important, but I discovered that taking care of the mind and emotions is equally fundamental. This was a lesson I learned the hard way after my wife Helen passed away 3 years ago. It was a very difficult period, where I found myself alone for the first time in 45 years of marriage. At first I thought I could handle everything on my own. After all, I had always been a strong man, right? Men don't cry, as my father used to say. But the truth is that loneliness started to weigh heavily, very heavily. The apartment, once full of life with Helen's presence, seemed too big, too quiet. It was Mary, my daughter, who noticed the first signs. "Dad, you're not leaving the house anymore. You're not going to church. You barely take care of the garden you love so much." She tried to convince me to seek professional help, but I resisted. In my head, psychologists were for people with real problems. The change began on a Sunday during a family lunch. My grandson Peter, with that sincerity that only children have, asked, "Grandpa, why are you always sad?" That innocent question hit me like a punch to the stomach. That's when I realized I needed to do something. I accepted Mary's suggestion and started attending a support group for seniors at the community center. At first, I just listened to other people's stories, but gradually I opened up. I discovered that I wasn't alone in my pains and fears. That's where I met Mrs. Celia, a 75-year-old lady who had gone through a similar situation to mine. She introduced me to Dr. Laura, a psychologist who became a great ally in my journey of self-discovery. "Mr. Joe," she always says, "taking care of mental health is as important as taking medication for blood pressure." With Dr. Laura, I learned that there's no shame in feeling homesick, in crying, in admitting that we need help. She taught me mindfulness techniques, a complicated word that basically means paying attention to the present moment. One of the first activities she suggested was to resume taking care of my garden. Plants, she explained, have an incredible therapeutic power. And she was right. Taking care of my rose bushes, seeing the plants grow, smelling the wet earth, all of this started to bring back a sense of purpose. I also started attending a gardening group in the neighborhood park. Every Saturday morning, we gather to exchange seedlings, cultivation tips, and most importantly, life stories. That's where I met Mr. Anthony, who became a great friend. He taught me everything about orchids, and I taught him about tomatoes. Now we have a small community garden that is the pride of the neighborhood. Dr. Laura also encouraged me to explore new hobbies. "Mr. Joe, we need to keep the mind active." That's how I discovered painting. I had never picked up a brush in my life, but I started attending watercolor classes with Mrs. Beatrice, a retired artist who teaches at her home. My first attempts were a real disaster. They looked more like Peter's drawings. But over time I improved. Today I have a special corner in the apartment that I call Grandpa's Studio. The walls are full of watercolors, mainly of flowers from my garden and landscapes, that remind me of the trips I took with Helen. Music also entered my life unexpectedly. It all started when Sophie, my oldest granddaughter, gave me an old guitar she found at a bazaar as a gift. "Grandpa, it's never too late to learn something new," she said. And she was right. I started taking lessons with Professor Michael, a very patient young man who gives classes to seniors. Now, every Thursday afternoon, we have a small musical soiree in Mr. Anthony's garage. He plays the harmonica, I risk a few notes on the guitar, and Mrs. Zelda has a beautiful voice. The neighbors even put chairs on the sidewalk to watch. One of the greatest discoveries was the power of gratitude. So, Laura suggested I keep a gratitude journal. Every day, before bed, I write down 3 good things that happened. At first I thought it was silly, but today this ritual has become one of the most important moments of my day. I also learned the importance of maintaining an active social routine. In addition to the gardening and music groups, I participate in a book club at the neighborhood library. Once a month we meet to discuss a book. It's amazing how each person has a different interpretation of the same story. Technology, which I used to resist so much, has become an important ally. I learned to use WhatsApp and Zoom to keep in touch with distant friends and family. Every Sunday night, I have a video call with my brother who lives in Florida. Sophie taught me how to use funny filters, Making Grandpa appear with bunny ears always gets laughs from the grandkids. Laura says, helping others is a powerful way to help yourself. To keep my mind active, I created a routine that works well for me. Monday, morning, gardening in my backyard. Afternoon, guitar lesson. Evening, reading and gratitude journal. Tuesday, morning support group. Afternoon, watercolor painting. Evening, call with family. Wednesday, morning, volunteering at the nursing home. Afternoon, book club. Evening, guided meditation. Thursday, morning, orchid care. Afternoon, musical soiree. Evening, session with Dr. Laura. Friday, morning, community garden. Afternoon, activities with grandchildren. Evening, card games with friends. Weekend, various activities with family and friends. Sunday, church family lunch. For those starting to take care of their mental health in their senior years, here are some tips I learned on this journey. Don't be ashamed to seek professional help. Stay socially active. Develop new hobbies and interests. Practice gratitude daily. Connect with nature. Maintain a routine, but be flexible. Allow yourself to feel and express emotions. As doctor, one of the activities that helped me the most was volunteering. I started teaching gardening classes at a nursing home near my house. Seeing the smile on the elderly faces when they manage to sprout their first seed is priceless. As Dr. Laura says, mental health is like a garden. It needs daily care, attention, and lots of love. And she's right. Today, at 72, I feel emotionally more balanced than ever. Of course, I still have my difficult days, moments of longing and sadness. But I've learned that this is part of life, and that I don't need to carry these feelings alone. As Mr. Anthony says, we don't need to be strong all the time. Sometimes it's enough to be true. Seeing how my family notices this change is very rewarding. The other day, Mary commented, "Dad, you have a different sparkle in your eyes." And she's right. I've learned that taking care of the mind is just as important as taking care of the body, and that it's never too late to start over. With all this change in my life, the exercises, the diet, regulated sleep, and emotional balance, there was still an important piece of the puzzle missing: naturally strengthening my immunity. It was Mrs. Zelda, my neighbor, who is also a retired naturalist, who introduced me to the world of natural recipes to boost the immune system. It all started on a winter morning when she saw me sneezing while watering my plants. "Mr. Joe, come here and I'll teach you a home remedy my grandmother taught me." This was my first introduction to what she affectionately calls her living pharmacy. At first, I confess I was a bit skeptical. After all, I had always been one of those who ran to the pharmacy at the first sneeze. But Mrs. Zelda had impressive knowledge about herbs and medicinal plants, passed down from generation to generation in her family. "Mr. Joe," she explained while harvesting ginger from her garden, "our grandparents didn't have a pharmacy on the corner, but they knew how to use what nature offers." And that's how I began my journey into the world of natural remedies. The first recipe I learned was Mrs. Zelda's famous immunity-boosting tea. Ingredients: 1 piece of fresh ginger about 1 inch, 1 lemon, 1 tablespoon of pure honey, a small piece of propolis, 1 cinnamon stick, 3 cloves. Preparation: grate the ginger, squeeze the lemon, boil water with cinnamon and cloves, mix everything and sweeten with honey. Add a few drops of propolis. The secret, she always says, is to drink it while it's still warm, preferably early in the morning. And you know what? It really works. Since I started drinking this tea every morning, that cold that used to catch me every winter has given me a break. Excited by the results, I started taking a medicinal plants course at the community center. That's where I met Mrs. June, an 85-year-old lady who seemed to have a PhD in natural herbs. She taught me her famous Vitality Tonic. Ingredients: fresh ginger, turmeric, lemon, pure honey, a pinch of black pepper. She explained that black pepper helps the body better absorb the benefits of turmeric. "It's the combination that makes the strength, Mr. Joe." And she was right. After I started taking this tonic, my energy improved a lot. I transformed a corner of my garden into a small living pharmacy. I planted mint, which is great for digestion, lemongrass, which helps relax, ginger, the wild card of immunity, and several other medicinal herbs. Mary jokes that my garden has become an open-air pharmacy. One of the greatest joys was being able to share these discoveries with my family. When my grandson Peter caught a cold, I prepared the guaco syrup with honey that I learned from Mrs. June. Zelda's immunity-boosting tea, a spoonful of propolis with honey. Before lunch, green juice with kale, apple and ginger. In the afternoon, lemongrass tea with lemon balm, a spoonful of propolis jelly. Before bed, chamomile tea with lavender. Pure honey, a small teaspoon. I also learned to make more elaborate preparations to always have at home. Propolis and honey syrup. Ingredients: 1 bottle of propolis, 8 oz of pure honey, grated ginger. How to make: mix everything and store in a dark glass. Jar echinacea tincture. I learned to make this with Mrs. Mary was impressed with how quickly he got better. I created a routine of natural preparations that work very well for me. In the morning, Mrs. June, great for boosting immunity in winter, calendula ointment, for small wounds and skin irritations. The most interesting thing was realizing how these natural preparations integrate perfectly with everything I've learned about health in recent years. Regular physical exercise, balanced diet, regulated sleep and emotional balance create a solid foundation, and natural remedies come as a perfect complement. Of course, I didn't abandon my conventional medications. I still take my blood pressure pills and do all medical follow-ups. As Dr. Claire, my geriatrician, says, Mr. Joe, natural and conventional can and should go hand in hand. I organized a small notebook with all the recipes I learned. Sophie, my granddaughter, helped me digitize everything, and we even created a blog called Grandpa Joe's Recipes. Who would have thought that at 72, I would become a natural recipe influencer? Every month, we have a meeting at the community center to exchange recipes and knowledge. It's impressive how each person has something new to teach. Mrs. Zelda brings her Portuguese recipes, Mrs. June shares indigenous knowledge, and I contribute with what I learned in courses and research. For those starting to explore the world of natural remedies, here are some important tips. Always consult your doctor before starting any natural treatment. Keep a diary, noting the effects of the preparations. Use quality ingredients, preferably organic. Respect recommended dosages. Store preparations properly. Identify and date all preparations. Don't replace prescribed medications without medical guidance. As Mrs. Zelda says, nature is wise, but we need to respect it and use it with knowledge. One of the greatest satisfactions is seeing how these natural recipes help other people. Last week, Mr. Anthony had a bad flu. I prepared my special tea, as friends already call it, and took it to him. The next day, he was much better. Mary says I've found my late vocation as a natural pharmacist. Jokes aside, I feel happy to be able to help people with such ancient and valuable knowledge. As Mrs. June says, each plant has its healing power. We just need to know how to listen to them. And so I conclude my journey of transformation, which began with smarter exercises, went through more conscious eating, more restorative sleep, appropriate physical activities, emotional balance, and culminated in this wonderful discovery of natural remedies. As the saying, Mrs. Zelda always repeats goes, health is not just in the pharmacy medicine, it's in the food from the garden, in the exercise of the body, in the rest of the mind, and in the joy of the heart. And I couldn't agree more. At 72, I can say that I've never felt so good and so fulfilled. Each morning is a new opportunity to learn something new, to take care of myself and others, to be grateful for the wisdom that life brings us. And you, who have come this far reading my stories, I hope you found inspiration to start your own wellness journey. After all, as I always tell my grandchildren, it's never too late to start, and every small step counts.